Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie Herbie, Fully Loaded, 2005, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. It begins in a junkyard, of all places. Sunlight pours through the broken slats in a rusted-out roof, catching on the scratched chrome and cracked windshields of forgotten relics. Among them sits a modest, battered little Volkswagen Beetle, white paint dulled by time, the number 53 still faintly visible on the hood like a scar from a past life. At first glance, there's nothing remarkable about it. Just another piece of automotive history slowly sinking into dust. But those who know, really know, understand that this car is different. It doesn't just drive, it feels. It remembers. And it's waiting for the right person to bring it back to life. Far from the gleam of racetracks and roaring engines, Maggie Peyton is trying to rewrite her own story. She's the kind of young woman who carries the weight of expectation like a backpack she can't quite take off. Her family, generations deep in racing legacy, believes her future is in the pits, literally. Strategy, support, safety. Not behind the wheel. Not out front. But Maggie has speed in her bones. It's a hunger, a rhythm, a whisper that gets louder every time she's near a racetrack. And yet, she keeps it buried, tucked under smiles and nods and an acceptance of what's expected. Until she meets that Beetle. Their introduction is anything but majestic. No gleaming debut or golden glow. It's a casual auction, a half-joke by her dad, a here, pick something cheap kind of moment. But the second Maggie lays eyes on the car, something shifts. Not a lightning strike. Not magic. Just connection. As if the car sees her in the same way she's starting to see herself, not as a passenger, but as someone with the potential to lead. The car doesn't purr or whisper. It revs. It nudges. It chooses her. And suddenly, Maggie's story has a co-pilot. One with its own quirks, secrets, and an appetite for adventure. What follows isn't just a coming-of-age tale. It's a full-throttle sprint through the winding roads of legacy, risk, and rediscovery. The Beetle, once cast aside and forgotten, reveals itself to be something far greater than a vehicle. It's a partner. A prankster. A legend with a mind of its own. From performing its own stunts to taking over the wheel during crucial moments, it becomes clear this is no ordinary car. It has opinions. It has moods. And it has unfinished business. Maggie doesn't just become a racer. She becomes a contender. Her path crashes into that of Trip Murphy, a professional driver with a sneer behind the wheel and a chip on his shoulder. He's everything slick and rehearsed, the face of the new racing generation, sponsorships, style, and arrogance. When Maggie, behind the wheel of her unusual companion, ends up besting him in an impromptu race, the gauntlet is thrown. What starts as a fluke quickly spirals into a challenge with national eyes watching. But speed isn't the only thing on trial. Maggie must navigate the disbelief of her family, the doubts of her peers, and her own uncertainty about whether she's truly cut out for the world she's entering. The Beetle pushes her, sometimes literally, sometimes emotionally. It refuses to let her coast. It drags her into races she didn't know she signed up for, forces her to confront fears she never spoke aloud, and reveals that winning isn't always about crossing the finish line first. It's about who you become on the way there. And just when it seems like everything is finally clicking, when Maggie and her unlikely partner are racing in harmony, winning hearts and headlines, the stakes climb higher. Accidents happen. Trust is tested. And the question looms, how do you keep going when everything's working against you? There's a moment that defines the soul of the story. Maggie, covered in sweat and doubt, looks at the Beetle and whispers, "What if they're right? What if I can't do this?" And in reply, the engine roars. Not because it's angry. Because it knows the truth. It believes in her before she does. And somehow, in that mechanical growl, she finds her courage. The climactic race is not just about beating Trip Murphy. It's about reclaiming the narrative, proving to everyone, especially herself, that her seat at the starting line was always hers. The crowd roars. Tires screech. And somewhere, in the blur of speed and sunlight, girl and car become something else entirely, a force fueled not just by horsepower, but by heart. Underneath all the high-octane sequences and laugh-out-loud antics, there's a deeper current running through this story. It's about rescue. Not just of a car, but of a dream. A belief. The forgotten spark inside someone who used to believe they were born to do more than sit in the passenger seat. And the genius of it all is that it tells this story without ever taking itself too seriously. It's charming, funny, light on its wheels. But it knows exactly what it's doing. There are key moments that make you laugh out loud, a car that flirts, dances, sulks, and even gets jealous. But there are also moments that catch you off guard. A look between father and daughter, unspoken but heavy with years of disappointment and pride. A moment when Maggie realizes that the path to greatness isn't straight. It's filled with turns, breakdowns, and sometimes flat tires. And if you're looking for twists, they're there. A sabotage that nearly sidelines Maggie permanently. A betrayal that forces her to question her own team. And an engine failure at the worst possible moment that somehow turns into a triumph through clever teamwork and just the right amount of magical realism. Every twist, every obstacle, is another test of resolve. Another moment where you're not sure if she'll rise or crash. In the end, it isn't just about winning the race. It's about winning herself back. The Beetle, in all its quirky, stubborn glory, serves as the catalyst. But Maggie is the engine. She's the one who learns how to steer, how to accelerate, how to say, "This is who I am," without waiting for permission. And by the time that checkered flag waves, it's not just victory she's earned. It's freedom. The story invites you to buckle up not just for speed, but for heart. It's fast-paced, yes, but never soulless. Every roar of the engine, every turn of the track, every tear in Maggie's eye tells you this isn't just about cars. It's about control. About choosing your path, even when others think they know where you should be. So if you ever find yourself stalled, doubting, sitting quietly in the lot of your own life, maybe what you need isn't a push. Maybe it's a Beetle. Maybe it's a reminder that even the most forgotten things, junked, dented, dismissed, can still roar back to life, fully loaded and ready to race. It begins not with a roar, but with a sigh. Somewhere on the sun-bleached outskirts of Los Angeles, tucked away behind a chain-link fence and piles of rusted-out history, a forgotten legend rests beneath the dust. Its white paint has faded, the iconic number 53 barely visible beneath layers of neglect, but something in its silence still feels alive. Waiting. Watching. Not asleep, just paused. And as the wind rolls over the empty junkyard, rattling windshields and tugging at dangling hubcaps, the world shifts. The story begins. Maggie Peyton doesn't look like someone about to change her life. She's not the center of attention in her own family. Far from it. Her days are filled with polite avoidance, supportive smiles, and dreams quietly shelved behind responsibility. Her father, Ray Peyton Sr., once a racing great himself, has long since decided Maggie's place is behind the scenes. Crew, strategy, safety, those are the boxes she's meant to check. Her older brother is the one who carries the family's hope for the track, even if his talent hasn't exactly matched expectations. Maggie, meanwhile, has been playing the part everyone assigned her. But speed is written into her DNA. It's not something she talks about. It's something she feels, a rush under her skin, a pull in her muscles, the way her eyes flick to every passing car like they're moving too slow. There's a fire in her that hasn't gone out, only been covered. And it's in this quiet tension, of hiding who she is, of settling for the safer road, that her path crosses with something extraordinary. A graduation gift becomes the unexpected catalyst. Ray Sr., firm in his belief that racing is too dangerous for his daughter, offers her the chance to pick a car from a local junkyard. Practical, humble, cheap, just enough to get her from home to her new job at ESPN. It's supposed to be a step into adulthood, a gift with limits. But when Maggie steps into that junkyard, the pull is immediate. She doesn't know why she stops beside the old Volkswagen Beetle. She just does. The car is unassuming, a relic from another era. But there's a presence to it, like it's watching her as closely as she's watching it. She runs her fingers across the hood, and somewhere deep inside the car's mechanical heart, something sparks. Her choice is made. Not by her, but with her. She doesn't pick the car. The car chooses her. She drives it home, or rather, it drives her home, veering suddenly, turning unexpectedly, leading her not just along the road but into something much larger. From that moment on, Maggie isn't just a girl with a car. She's the latest in a line of accidental adventurers to discover that this isn't any ordinary vehicle. The Beetle moves with purpose. It has reflexes, personality, even mood swings. It teases, sulks, protects. It dances to its own rhythm, and it's clear that Maggie has inherited something more powerful than she expected. But the world doesn't bend easily to magic, and Maggie's re-entry into the world of racing isn't graceful. During a spontaneous outing to a local car event, the Beetle's behavior attracts attention, especially when it takes part in an unsanctioned street challenge against none other than Trip Murphy, the reigning NASCAR champion. Sleek, arrogant, and dripping with sponsorships, Trip is everything Maggie's family reveres and everything Maggie has never aspired to be. He lives for the cameras, the showmanship, the roar of a crowd cheering for him and only him. So when a beaten-up bug dares to challenge his pride, and wins, the shockwaves are immediate. Trip's ego is bruised, badly. For him, it's not just a loss. It's a public embarrassment. The cameras catch it. The whispers begin. Who is this girl? What is this car? Trip doesn't want an explanation. He wants revenge. But Maggie's not thinking about Trip. Not really. She's thinking about how alive she felt behind the wheel. How she didn't feel out of place. How, for the first time in years, she wasn't holding herself back. The car seemed to know every move she wanted to make before she made it. It wasn't just skill. It was synchronicity. And that realization sends her spiraling into a choice she can't ignore. She wants back in. Not as support. Not as crew. As a racer. But the road there is anything but smooth. Her father is furious. Racing has always been a family business, yes, but also a family wound. His fears aren't just about safety, they're about loss. He knows what it takes to succeed in the sport, and he believes Maggie, no matter her talent, won't survive the pressure. Her brother is no help, caught up in his own failure to live up to the Peyton name. There's jealousy, too, thinly veiled behind concern. And Maggie, as always, is left to walk the line between proving herself and protecting the people she loves. So she trains in secret. The car, her strange, sentient sidekick, becomes her partner in rebellion. They practice on empty roads, on closed tracks under cover of night. The Beetle performs like it has something to prove too, like it's been waiting for this second chance as desperately as she has. Together, they fine-tune a dance that no one else understands. Drifting into corners. Accelerating with uncanny precision. Reacting to danger before it happens. And yet, the deeper Maggie dives, the more the stakes rise. Trip Murphy hasn't forgotten his defeat. He's watching. Waiting. And when he discovers that the same car from the street race is now competing under Maggie's name, he moves quickly to ensure that his image remains untarnished. Behind the scenes, sabotage begins. Rumors. Inspections. Mysterious failures. The Beetle is nearly disqualified after safety concerns are raised, concerns suspiciously timed and mysteriously lacking in evidence. Maggie is pushed to the edge. Is this what it's really like, chasing dreams? Is it all politics and posturing and broken promises? Her resolve is tested not just by Trip, but by her own uncertainty. There's a moment where she considers giving it all up. Parking the car. Walking away before it gets worse. Before the dreams fracture. But that car, quirky, stubborn, fiercely loyal, won't let her. It nudges her awake. Forces her to remember why she started. Why she chose this path, or rather, why it chose her. Meanwhile, she's building a team. Kevin, the friendly mechanic who's half in love with cars and the other half with possibility, becomes her closest ally. He doesn't ask how the car does what it does. He just believes. His support gives Maggie the confidence she needs to stand her ground. Each test, each time trial, becomes a battlefield. Not just for rankings, but for recognition. Maggie isn't just trying to win races. She's trying to prove that she belongs. That her name means more than lineage. That the car she drives, however strange, isn't a joke, but a champion. As media attention builds and whispers turn to headlines, Maggie becomes the underdog story of the year. Everyone wants to know, who is this girl and what's with that car? And the Beetle? It responds in kind. Whether it's pulling off impossible stunts, dodging sabotage attempts with comedic flair, or dazzling crowds with behavior that seems almost human, it becomes more than a vehicle. It becomes a symbol. For resilience. For second chances. For those who were told, not you. The engine revs louder. The spotlight grows hotter. And Maggie stands, quietly, in the center of it all, knowing the biggest race hasn't even started yet. The road ahead is long. The stakes are rising. But this time, for the first time, she's not afraid of what's coming. She's ready. And so is the car. It all builds to this. Not a roar. Not a sudden leap into glory. But a quiet, determined momentum. Like a storm that's taken its time to arrive. Maggie has come further than anyone expected. From the sidelines to the spotlight. From hand-me-down dreams to something that finally, undeniably feels like hers. And beside her, not behind, not beneath, but with her, is that small, stubborn car that seems to breathe with its own kind of magic. But the road ahead is not kind. It curves sharply, framed with the looming pressure of legacy and the ruthless scrutiny of the racing world. With every victory comes resistance. With every lap, new doubts creep in, not just from the outside, but from within. Maggie's fight isn't just on the track anymore. It's everywhere. Trip Murphy is far from done. His smirk has faded. The public charm he once wielded like a trophy now masks something bitter, something personal. The loss to Maggie has become a virus in his mind, spreading through his confidence like rust through steel. And where charm once ruled, spite now takes its place. He doesn't just want to win. He wants to crush. To humiliate. To remind everyone that there are rules to this world, and that no girl and her eccentric beetle are allowed to rewrite them. As the next big race approaches, the one that will determine if Maggie truly belongs on this stage, Trip begins a campaign of manipulation. Quiet. Surgical. He pulls strings behind the curtain. Whispers into the ears of race officials. Plants seeds of doubt. How can this girl, with her second-hand car and no formal training, be outperforming seasoned professionals? Maybe something's off. Maybe something illegal is at play. And the scrutiny grows. Suddenly Maggie finds herself under investigation. Not for cheating, but for not fitting the mold. The beetle is inspected, questioned, prodded. Officials look for hidden motors, forbidden tech. They find none, of course, but the whisper has already done its damage. Journalists frame it as a fluke. Sponsors pull back. Even Maggie's father, still struggling with the idea of his daughter risking herself on the track, begins to withdraw. Not in anger, but in fear. Fear that history will repeat. Fear that if she flies too close, she'll fall. But the Beetle doesn't falter. Instead, it leans in. As the pressure mounts, so does its personality. It revs when it wants to move. It spins in circles when ignored. It nudges Maggie forward when she hesitates. The car doesn't talk, but it communicates. With every mile, every lap, the bond between girl and machine becomes something deeper than strategy or performance. It becomes trust. Absolute. Pure. Unshakable. And that trust is tested to its core when disaster strikes. During a critical pre-race test run, Trip Murphy executes his most calculated sabotage yet. Using a rigged rival car, he orchestrates a collision, subtle enough to appear accidental, but severe enough to knock the Beetle out of commission. The car is towed off the track, engine coughing, bumper twisted. Maggie watches in silence, her fists clenched, her chest hollow. It's not just the car that's broken. It's momentum. The magic, once so certain, has sputtered. In the garage, things unravel. Mechanics shake their heads. Parts are scarce. Time is short. And for a few brutal moments, it seems like the journey ends here, on a lift, under fluorescent lights, surrounded by silence and scattered bolts. Maggie is alone. Until she's not. Because Kevin, her ever-loyal grease-stained friend, refuses to let the story end in failure. With his sleeves rolled up and heart in his hands, he begins the impossible rebuild. Piece by piece. Frame by frame. He pulls parts from junkers, retools what can be salvaged, breathes life back into the Beetle. Others join him. A rival pit crew offers a tool. A track official closes an eye. Even Maggie's father, silent for too long, steps into the garage, not with anger, but with understanding. He remembers. He remembers what it meant to believe in something faster than fear. And the car, silent through the repair, stoic through the setbacks, finally flickers to life. A soft rev. A heartbeat. It's not just back. It's ready. Race day arrives wrapped in nerves. The crowd is electric, unaware of the battles fought off-track. Cameras swarm. Commentators speculate. Maggie climbs into the driver's seat, her name barely mentioned in the predictions. She isn't the favorite. She isn't expected to last a lap. She's just the girl with the funny car. But she isn't here to impress anyone. She's here to finish what they started. The green flag waves, and chaos erupts. Engines scream. Tires squeal. The pack surges forward like a tidal wave of metal and pride. Maggie and her unlikely companion trail at first, cautious, letting the track unfold. The Beetle hums beneath her, every corner tight, every shift instinctual. The other racers dart and dodge, but she dances between them, not with force, but with finesse, and then it happens. A familiar shape appears in her rear-view mirror. Trip. His car gleams like a blade, aggressive and sharp. He doesn't just pass, he attacks. He blocks. He bumps. He forces Maggie wide on a turn, trying to shake her off rhythm. But the Beetle holds its line. It doesn't just react, it anticipates. It cuts inside on a hairpin turn, reclaiming position. Trip snarls. The audience roars. It becomes a duel. Not of horsepower, but of will. One driver fueled by ego. The other by purpose. The final laps become legend. Trip's moves grow dirtier. He clips bumpers. Slams fenders. But Maggie doesn't blink. Every challenge he throws, she answers. And in the final stretch, when the finish line gleams like a mirage, Trip pulls one last trick. He swerves into her path, boxing her out, trying to end it then and there. But the Beetle is done playing fair. With a defiant squeal of rubber and a burst of impossible speed, it launches itself around the outside. 2 wheels off the ground. A maneuver no car should survive. But it does. They do. Maggie and her car shoot past Tripp in the final breath of the race. The crowd erupts. Flashbulbs explode. And just like that, she wins. Not just the race, but the right to race. The trophy is heavy. The applause is loud. But the most powerful moment is quiet. Maggie stands by the car, fingers brushing the hood, eyes full of tears she refuses to shed. Around her, everything she was told she couldn't do now stands undone. Her father wraps her in a hug. No conditions. No corrections. Just pride. Her team hoists her onto their shoulders. The crowd chants her name. And the beetle? It honks once. Like a smile. The credits don't roll over glory. They roll over motion. Maggie and the beetle, back on the road. Not racing. Just driving. Toward whatever comes next. Toward new races, new risks. The story doesn't end with the checkered flag. It begins again with the next stretch of highway. Because this isn't just about speed. It's about choosing your own lane. And never looking back. At the heart of every high-octane race, beneath the layers of tire smoke and polished chrome, behind the roaring engines and spotlight finishes, are people. Beating hearts with dreams, fears, fractures, and grit. And in the story of a girl, a car, and the world that tried to tell them they didn't belong, character is everything. Let's start where the engine truly begins, with Maggie Peyton. She isn't the loudest in the room, nor the flashiest. She doesn't carry herself with bravado or strut in with the swagger of someone who expects attention. In fact, for much of her life, she's been taught to dim her own headlights. To watch from the pits while others burn rubber across the finish line. But there's something in her eyes from the very first frame. A restlessness. A rhythm that doesn't quite match the world she's been forced to live in. Beneath her soft smile and practical outlook is a pilot waiting for ignition. Maggie is, at her core, a woman trapped between expectation and instinct. Her family wants to protect her, the world wants to define her, and even she doesn't fully trust the burning hunger she feels when she hears an engine hum. But unlike so many protagonists who begin their stories as blank slates, Maggie isn't discovering who she is. She's uncovering who she's always been. Every step she takes isn't transformation. It's reclamation. And she does it with quiet resilience. She doesn't need to shout. Her victories aren't scored with speeches. They come in glances. In grit. In the way she keeps driving, even when the road is blocked, even when no one is cheering. Especially then. Her arc is one of the most satisfying in any sports film. Not because she suddenly becomes fearless, but because she stops apologizing for being afraid and drives anyway. Opposite her, but never truly against her, stands the most unconventional co-lead in a film driven by character, a small white Volkswagen Beetle with a heart of its own. What makes this car so compelling is that it never says a word, and yet we understand everything it's feeling. The Beetle is mischievous, stubborn, emotional. It sulks when ignored, celebrates when praised, and pushes when someone needs to be reminded of their worth. It's not just a machine. It's a reflection, a mirror of Maggie's buried bravery and unspoken confidence. When she hesitates, it accelerates. When she's about to give up, it taps the brakes. Its loyalty is fierce and instinctive. But the Beetle isn't just her sidekick, it's her equal. A survivor in its own right. Cast aside, left to rot, nearly forgotten in a junkyard. Sound familiar? Their bond isn't forged out of magic. It's forged out of mutual understanding. Both are underestimated. Both are dismissed. And both have something left to prove. Together, they don't just rewrite the rules. They redefine partnership. Then there's Ray Peyton Sr., Maggie's father, a man built from oil, track dust, and tradition. He's not cruel. He's not even unreasonable. He's just afraid. His protection comes from a place of love, but it's steeped in assumption. He sees his daughter's potential, but through the narrow lens of safety, of structure. of legacy. He's lost things to this sport, maybe dreams, maybe people, and the fear of losing Maggie too freezes him in place. His arc is subtle, but essential. Watching him thaw, watching him see his daughter not as someone to shield, but someone to cheer for, is one of the film's emotional undercurrents. He doesn't start the film rooting against her. He starts it rooting for the version of her he thinks he knows. And that's what makes his change so moving. Not just that he's wrong, but that he realizes it and chooses to support her not despite his fear, but because of his love. By the time he's helping under the hood during that final, desperate rebuild, we understand. He's not just fixing a car. He's mending a bond. Next, there's Kevin, the wide-eyed mechanic with dirt-stained hands and a heart too big to hide. He's not a traditional love interest. There's no big kiss, no romantic subplot overpowering the central narrative. What Kevin brings to the story is something far more grounded: belief. From the very beginning, he sees Maggie's potential. He doesn't try to push her forward or pull her out. He simply stands with her. His charm isn't in being smooth or heroic. It's in being kind, steady, in knowing when to speak and when to listen. Kevin also serves as the bridge between logic and wonder. He works with machines. He understands engines. And yet, when confronted with the Beatles' strange sentience, he doesn't question it, he accepts it. Because sometimes, the most profound support isn't about needing answers. It's about embracing the impossible with an open heart. And then, there's Trip Murphy. The man, the myth, the ego. Trip is every arrogant racer stereotype, but he's not a caricature. He's calculated, image-obsessed, incredibly skilled, yes, but utterly hollow in his purpose. He races for fame, for endorsement deals, for dominance. And that makes him the perfect foil. Where Maggie races to reclaim herself, Trip races to protect a kingdom built on insecurity. Every smirk, every cheap trick, every sneer he throws Maggie's way isn't just antagonism. It's desperation because deep down, Trip sees her. He sees the threat. Not in her speed, but in her spirit. In her refusal to play the game by his rules. And so he fights her with sabotage, with mockery, with brute force. But the more he tries to control the outcome, the more he unravels. His breakdown isn't explosive. It's quietly pathetic. By the time he crosses that finish line behind her, we're not watching a villain lose. We're watching a man realize that his empire means nothing if it can be outmatched by belief, heart, and one scrappy little beetle. Around these central players orbit others who add color, tension, and texture. Ray Jr., Maggie's brother, is a shadow of unfulfilled expectations. Caught between wanting to succeed and fearing he never will, he sees Maggie's rise as both threat and inspiration. His frustration isn't villainous, it's vulnerable. He spent so long believing the story had to revolve around him that when someone else takes the wheel, he doesn't know where to stand. But perhaps what's most impressive about the character ensemble is how none of them exist purely as tropes. Even the background characters, pit crew, announcers, fellow racers, feel lived in. They react with genuine surprise. They shift with the narrative. No one is static. Everyone evolves as Maggie carves her way forward. Even the audience in the story becomes a character of sorts. At first they mock. They laugh. A girl? In that car? Please. But slowly they shift. They lean forward. They start cheering. Not just for the spectacle, but for what Maggie represents. They become mirrors for the real-world viewers, those watching at home, in theaters, seeing their own underestimated selves reflected back at them. And in that transformation, something beautiful happens. This film, this fun, light-hearted, whimsical adventure, becomes something far deeper. It becomes a statement about who gets to compete, who gets to win, who gets to drive. In the end, it's not just Maggie who changes. It's everyone who doubted her. It's everyone who saw her in that car, defiant and determined, and realized that maybe, just maybe, they could take the wheel in their own lives too. Because characters like Maggie don't just exist to entertain us. They exist to remind us who we are when we stop apologizing and start driving forward. It's funny how a film about a sentient, mischievous little car turned out to have just as much personality off the screen as it did on it. You'd expect a production like this, a light-hearted family film with a touch of racing magic and Disney charm, to follow a clean, predictable course. But the truth is, Herbie, Fully Loaded was anything but ordinary behind the scenes. Beneath its polished frame and cheerful tone lay a chute filled with bizarre hiccups, mechanical mishaps, and stories so strange they almost feel scripted. Let's begin with the most unusual star of all, Herbie himself. Or should we say, the Herbies? Because there wasn't just one. Not even three. The production used a staggering fleet of over 30 different Volkswagen Beetles throughout filming, each one modified for specific functions. Some were built for stunts. Others were constructed to emote, yes, emote, with specially designed hydraulic rigs allowing the headlights to move like eyebrows, the hood to lift in surprise, and the wheels to tilt just so to give Herbie that perfect body language. One Beetle had no engine at all. Another was gutted entirely and built around a remote control system, allowing operators to drive Herbie into place without a human at the wheel. Then there was the Herbie built solely to drive sideways. Not just simulate it. Actually drive sideways. That one had its front axle replaced with a custom mount that allowed it to crabwalk, an effect used for comedic scenes where Herbie slides up to Maggie like a puppy eager for attention. These Frankenstein cars were all painted the same, numbered the same, but had completely different skeletons underneath. One of the crew members called them the Herbie Hive. And yes, some of those cars had names. Not Herbie. Different names. The crew gave them nicknames based on their behavior or quirks. Wally was the slow one. Spaz had a jumpy gear shift that startled actors. Sneaky Pete was the lightweight frame car that the stunt driver could drift with on a dime. These cars became like cast members, temperamental, high maintenance, and sometimes a little too alive for comfort. Then there was the issue of personality. Herbie, though voiceless, had to convey emotion in every scene. That meant rehearsals weren't. Sometimes, it's easy to overlook a story when it wears its heart on its sleeve. A racing beetle, a rebellious girl, a few pratfalls, and a tidy Disney bow wrapped around a feel-good finish. It might sound light, maybe even forgettable. But Herbie, Fully Loaded beneath its glossy surface, is one of those films that quietly lodges itself into the cultural consciousness, not because it shouts, but because it dares to speak the language of sincerity in an era hungry for irony. From the outset, the film presents its conflict not through villains in the traditional sense, but through limitations, familial, societal, and personal. Maggie Peyton isn't battling an evil empire. She's up against a world that has already decided who she is and where she belongs. And in that way, the film immediately stakes its ground in a very real kind of struggle, one audiences, especially young women, intimately recognize. Critically, one of the most significant and understated events in the film comes in that early, quiet moment in the junkyard. There, among the rust and weeds, Maggie chooses, or is chosen by, Herbie. It's a scene played without pomp. No grand revelation. No orchestral swell. But it's the heartbeat of the entire narrative. Herbie, discarded and forgotten, mirrors Maggie's own emotional state. Both are relics of potential that others have written off. That simple act of choosing the Beetle becomes a profound act of self-identification. In saving the car, she begins the process of reclaiming herself. This is where the film's emotional resonance begins to take shape, in its unflinching belief in second chances. Not just for underdogs, but for those who were never even allowed on the track. Herbie himself, without uttering a word, becomes a symbol of resistance to obsolescence. In a culture that often devalues what's seen as outdated, impractical, or unfashionable, this humble car races not against rivals, but against irrelevance. Critics who dismissed the film as just another reboot perhaps missed the meta-commentary entirely. The story was never about modernizing Herbie for a new generation. It was about showing that he never stopped mattering. The film's second major critical moment, one often overshadowed by the flashier races, is Maggie's confrontation with her father. Ray Peyton Sr. Here lies the emotional knot that defines so much of her arc. She's not just asking for permission to race, she's asking to be seen, to be trusted, to be acknowledged as someone with both desire and ability. That scene, restrained and intimate, reveals the quiet power of the narrative. Maggie doesn't want her father to fight for her. She wants him to step aside, to stop protecting her from the very thing she was born to chase. What critics often glossed over in early reviews is how gracefully the film handles generational tension. Ray Sr. isn't the antagonist. He's the embodiment of fear disguised as love. And when he finally turns to support his daughter, it isn't a moment of redemption for him. It's one of liberation for Maggie. She no longer needs validation. But she does need space. And it's in this transaction that the film resonates with anyone who has ever had to outgrow the boundaries drawn by someone else's caution. Another pivotal event arrives mid-film during the unsanctioned street race with Trip Murphy. This is more than spectacle. It's a declaration. Maggie, with no title, no sponsor, and no reputation, faces down the reigning champion and wins. Not because Herbie cheats or because of luck, but because she trusts her instinct. And in that moment, a new power dynamic is born. Trip represents polished masculinity, corporate-backed confidence, and media-approved swagger. Herbie and Maggie? They're chaos. Authenticity. The future no one expected. From a critical standpoint, that race reframes the film's thematic core. You don't need permission to participate. You just need courage to show up. This is why Herbie doesn't just drive, he leads. He forces Maggie into situations that demand choice. Not passive observation. Active movement. And that idea, of moving forward even when the system isn't built for you, is quietly revolutionary in a genre known for predictable arcs. The Sabotage subplot further deepens this idea. As Trip Murphy realizes he can't beat Maggie on skill, he resorts to manipulation. This mirrors how systems, be they professional, patriarchal, or institutional, often react when merit threatens structure. Instead of adapting, they obstruct. They whisper. They question legitimacy. And yet, the film doesn't answer that obstruction with rage. It answers it with resilience. When Herbie is damaged, and Maggie faces the real threat of elimination, the emotional stakes shift from, can she win? To, can she keep believing? That's a question far more relatable than many critics gave the film credit for. It's not about one victory. It's about the wear and tear of constantly having to prove your worth just to exist in the race. It's a culmination of all the quiet refusals to give up. Maggie doesn't win because she's the best. She wins because she refused to stop trying. Her victory isn't about beating Trip. It's about completing the transformation from passenger to driver, both literally and metaphorically. She no longer races to earn her place in the world. She races because the road is hers to take. That moment, captured in a single shot as she crosses the finish line with Herbie leaping beside her like a co-conspirator in joy, lands not because of spectacle, but because of the journey that led there. A girl, told she wasn't allowed, did it anyway. And that's a narrative more needed than most critics knew at the time. In terms of reception, the film arrived at a strange cultural moment. In 2005, family films were either animated behemoths or loud, CGI-heavy comedies. Herbie, fully loaded, with its practical effects, old-school heart, and unshakable sincerity, felt oddly out of step. Some critics called it cheesy. Others felt its tone was too innocent for a modern audience. But over time, something interesting happened. The film didn't disappear. It lingered. Viewers came back to it, not for the racing, not even for nostalgia, but for the emotional clarity it offered. for the quiet rebellion of Maggie Payton, for the strange charisma of a car that communicated more through tilts and honks than most side characters with full scripts, and for the idea that in a world constantly trying to speed past anything with soul, maybe there's still space for stories that move at a different rhythm. Thematically, the film explores identity without ever naming it. It speaks to the need for autonomy, to the idea that skill should not be gate-kept by legacy. It champions emotional intelligence in a genre dominated by brute force. Herbie isn't fast because he's powerful. He's fast because he understands. And Maggie isn't a hero because she's fearless. She's a hero because she drives through fear. In the years since its release, critics have started to view the film through a softer, more generous lens. Its message of inclusion, not just in gender, but in spirit, is more relevant than ever. It invites young viewers to ask, "What if I could be the driver?" And then it dares to answer, "You already are. You just haven't hit the gas yet." Herbie, fully loaded, may wear the shell of a family racing comedy, but its engine is philosophical. Its script may sparkle with charm, but its heart beats with something deeper, the belief that belonging isn't something handed to you. It's something you claim. That truth, nestled between tire screeches and heartfelt glances, is what gives the film its staying power. So when critics called it simple, they weren't entirely wrong. But sometimes, simplicity is radical. Sometimes, the boldest thing a film can do is believe. Sometimes, a film's magic doesn't just live on the screen. It lives in the unspoken laughter behind the lens, the early mornings coated in dust and sun, the quiet improvisations that only a handful of people ever see. And in the case of Herbie, Fully Loaded, a production that appeared on the surface to be a light-hearted family adventure, the process behind bringing it to life was nothing short of its own wild ride. From mechanical mishaps to impromptu racing rehearsals, the creation of this beloved revival was fueled as much by chaos as it was by craft. It all began, fittingly, in a warehouse lined with Volkswagen Beetles, rows and rows of them, each nearly identical in appearance but built with wildly different personalities. The film used over 30 distinct Herbie cars during production. Some were light and stripped down for speed. Others were heavy with mechanical rigs. A few were remote-controlled. And a select few were affectionately referred to by the crew as the actors because of their ability to emote, through blinking headlights, moving bumpers, or shifting suspensions designed to mimic body language. The Herbies weren't just props. They were collaborators. Each car was designated for a specific purpose. One was built solely for high-speed straightaways. Another was designed to pop wheelies. One could even drive sideways, thanks to a custom chassis that allowed the wheels to rotate on a special track system underneath the car's body. These versions had names, nicknames given by the crew who spent hours under their hoods and bumpers. Waldo was the finicky one. Shivers had steering issues. Hank had the best emotional range and the softest headlights, apparently. Director Angela Robinson took all of this in stride. At the time, she was carving out a name in an industry that hadn't seen many women helm major studio comedies, let alone one tied to such a legacy. But her vision was sharp. She wanted to revive the heart of Herbie without turning him into a cartoon. She insisted on practical effects over digital enhancements, grounding the film's magic in mechanics rather than pixels. That meant real stunts, real tracks, real dirt. This choice wasn't easy. Coordinating a fleet of specialty Beetles was an enormous logistical puzzle. A typical scene might involve 4 different cars, each swapped out between takes depending on the needs of the shot. One car would roll into frame, another would brake dramatically, a third would be rigged for a bounce, and a fourth might need to show subtle emotion. Continuity was a nightmare, and the assistant directors became experts at identifying Herbie variants from 20 yards away by the wear on their tires or the color of their interior lining. The production design was no less meticulous. Herbie's racing stripe, the iconic red, white, and blue band that curved from hood to bumper, had to be perfectly aligned across all models. That meant every car had to be repainted frequently, often between takes. The number 53? It wasn't just slapped on. It had to match an exact font, spacing, and size. Crew members carried stencils like sacred scripts, guarding Herbie's visual identity with almost religious precision. Meanwhile, Lindsay Lohan was entering a new chapter in her career. Fresh off the success of Mean Girls, she approached the role of Maggie Peyton with a mix of curiosity and determination. She took racing lessons, worked closely with stunt coordinators, and developed an unexpectedly heartfelt bond with the car. "I started treating Herbie like a co-star," she later said. "It helped, because the car did feel alive sometimes." There were moments on set where Herbie's response seemed too perfect, too intuitive. In one take, Lohan was meant to plead with the car during a moment of crisis. Before she could finish the line, the car's headlights dimmed, completely unscripted. The crew froze. "Was that programmed?" someone asked. "It wasn't. A glitch? Maybe. But the timing was eerie. The take was used in the final cut. Of course, not everything went smoothly. One of the most infamous days of the shoot involved a racetrack, a sudden gust of wind, and about 20 catering trays. The crew was mid-scene, setting up a high-speed chase between Herbie and Trip Murphy, when an unexpected crosswind sent loose track banners flying across the set. One wrapped around a Herbie's windshield, causing the driver, hidden in the back seat with a remote steering rig, to swerve into a catering station. Pasta flew. Salad soared. A vat of lemonade overturned onto the stunt coordinator's chair. They called it the Great Fettuccine Incident. Then there was the rainstorm in Pasadena. It hadn't rained in weeks, but on the night they planned to film Herbie's dramatic drift under city lights, the sky opened. Equipment was rushed under tarps. Makeup ran. Lohan slipped on wet pavement during rehearsal. But instead of scrapping the scene, the crew pivoted. They rescripted the moment into a rain-soaked revelation, a quiet exchange between Maggie and Herbie that ultimately became one of the film's most touching beats. That spontaneous rewrite, born of necessity, lent the film a melancholy grace it hadn't planned for. Stunt drivers played an outsized role in the production's success. Herbie's personality relied heavily on movement, timing, pacing, lean, and lift. And that required precision driving at sometimes dangerous speeds. Professional driver Tanner Faust was among the crew, executing complex maneuvers with millimeter-perfect control. His job? Make it look like Herbie was thinking. That meant soft accelerations, dramatic pauses, even reverse driving in wide arcs. Watching Faust drive Herbie was like watching ballet on 4 wheels. Meanwhile, production designer Barbara Ling brought flair to the aesthetic. She built a world that echoed the vintage roots of the Herbie franchise but pulsed with modern color. Look closely, and you'll notice subtle Easter eggs. Posters referencing the original Love Bug films, oil cans bearing logos from Herbie's past races, and the return of a few key license plates hidden in plain sight. But perhaps the most endearing story to come out of the shoot involved the youngest members of the crew. Each Friday, the set held what they called Herbie Hour, a brief moment where kids from the crew families were invited onto the lot to sit in Herbie, take photos, and hear stories from cast and crew. It wasn't just PR. It was part of the energy Robinson wanted: joy, connection, wonder. The kids were invited to talk to Herbie, and sometimes the remote-controlled rig would respond, blinking, honking, nudging. Laughter echoed down the studio lot. For those few minutes each week, the film wasn't a production. It was a playground. On the final day of shooting, one of the emotion-rigged Herbies was rolled onto the set for the last time. The crew gathered. Lohan climbed in one last time. The director gave a quiet nod. And without a cue, the car's headlights blinked. Its hood lifted just slightly. It revved. No one spoke. Then someone whispered, "He's saying goodbye." And maybe that was it. Maybe the film, despite its challenges, despite the oddity of talking about a car like a living being, had created something more than a movie. Maybe it had captured the rare, unquantifiable spirit that exists only when every moving part, actors, machines, crew, script, align in just the right way. And in the end, that's what made Herbie, Fully Loaded, so unforgettable. Not just the races, not just the jokes, but the humanity found in the mechanical. The laughter that came when the camera stopped rolling. The grease-stained hands and tired feet that worked not for fame, but for the joy of making something move. And Herbie? Well, he moved all of us. No archived files were found on the topic, but let's take a ride anyway, through the streets, tracks, and garages of Herbie, Fully Loaded. Because the magic of this film doesn't just lie in its characters or in the whimsical spark of a car with a mind of its own. It lives in the places it chooses to go, the roads it races down, the spaces it inhabits, the feeling of being somewhere specific, somewhere vivid, somewhere alive. The setting of this story isn't just backdrop, it's part of the heartbeat. We begin in a place that feels almost sacred in the world of underdog stories, the junkyard. It's not just a graveyard of machines. It's a cathedral of the forgotten. Dust floats in shafts of sunlight. Old tires slump like worn-out dreams. Engines gutted, windows cracked, fenders scratched by time and abandonment. And there, tucked between rusted relics, sits a small, white car, weathered but not broken. It's in this desolate space that the first spark is struck. The junkyard isn't just the location of a chance meeting between Maggie and Herbie. It's the visual metaphor for everything this story wants to say. That what the world throws away still holds power. That discarded things, be they cars or dreams, can still race again. From there, the film opens into a variety of landscapes that mirror Maggie's transformation. She begins in confined spaces, suburban homes, narrow roads, office buildings. These settings are tight, structured, practical, just like her life. But as she leans into the possibility of racing, the camera begins to breathe. The locations open up. Skies get bigger. Roads get longer. Frames begin to stretch. Los Angeles, often overused as a generic setting, is given a fresh treatment here. The film doesn't linger on landmarks or glamour shots. It dives into movement, the pulse of the city, the blur of cars weaving through freeway traffic, the crunch of gravel beneath tires on backlots and practice courses. Cinematographer Greg Gardiner plays with scale and texture. You'll notice how often the camera dips just low enough to put Herbie in the foreground, making the world feel larger than life, but never larger than him. One of the most iconic settings in the film is the racetrack. Not just a single track, but a progression of circuits that slowly elevate the stakes. Early test runs are filmed on local modest circuits, dusty, quiet, filled with the kind of low bleachers and battered signage that screams small-town charm. But as Maggie gains momentum, the tracks change. They grow more intense, more industrial, more crowded with lights and metal and media crews. The climactic NASCAR race is a cacophony of movement and noise, glowing boards, thrumming engines, masses of spectators. But within that noise, the film finds moments of calm. One of the most beautifully composed sequences happens in the shadow of the grandstand. Maggie, preparing for the big race, stands alone beside Herbie. The frame holds still, a soft, dusky glow kissing the curves of the car's fenders. Behind her, the stadium looms. Ahead, the track waits. It's a pause, a breath between heartbeats, and it grounds the chaos in intimacy. Garage settings also carry tremendous weight in the film's atmosphere. These aren't just functional spaces where tools clang and grease smears. They're places of transformation. Maggie and Herbie build their bond under the fluorescence of these sacred halls. The color palette shifts in these scenes, grays and blues, softened by tungsten warmth. It's where the physical and emotional repair happen in tandem. Each bolt tightened, each engine rev, speaks not just to Herbie's resurrection, but to Maggie's own. But the film doesn't stay boxed in by industrial landscapes. It breathes into the surreal. There's the night race, one of the most visually rich sequences in the entire film. Neon signs bounce off Herbie's polished shell. Streetlights smear across the windshield like streaks of adrenaline. The camera lingers just long enough on reflective puddles, trailing light and color in Herbie's wake. It's here that the cinematography shifts from documentation to romance. The city is alive. The car is alive. Everything is in motion, and yet, there's a stillness inside the speed. A calm confidence in every frame. Gardner shoots the city not as a backdrop, but as a participant. The buildings lean in. The signs blink knowingly. The streets roll out like an invitation. And then there's color. Color is one of the most underrated storytelling tools in the film. Herbie's palette, white, with red and blue stripes, never changes. He is consistent, loyal, centered, but the world around him shifts constantly. Maggie's early scenes are framed in softer tones, neutral clothing, washed-out streets. But as her confidence grows, color returns. She begins to wear brighter tones. Her settings become more saturated. By the time she's in full racing gear, she visually belongs in Herbie's world. They've aligned, not just in partnership, but in aesthetic harmony. The racing sequences themselves are constructed with a level of detail that's easy to overlook in a family film. The camera never loses geography. You always know where Maggie is in the pack. The use of dynamic aerial shots mixed with interior driver POVs creates immersion without disorientation. Gardner resists the temptation to overcut. Instead, he lets the rhythm of the track dictate tempo. Slow during build-up. Fast and kinetic during turns. Wide and triumphant during passes. One especially inspired sequence uses the camera not just to follow, but to lead. As Maggie and Herbie surge ahead during a pivotal race, the camera doesn't trail them. It races backward, facing them, inviting us into their charge. The effect is electric. It's no longer about watching a character succeed. It's about feeling the success. Riding it. Settings like Maggie's home or her ESPN job play contrasting roles. They're shot flatly. Locked-down cameras. Minimal motion. These are spaces of containment. They reflect the expectations placed upon her. The idea that stability is more valuable than ambition. The film's cinematography subtly rejects that. The more Maggie rebels, the more the visuals move with her. It's as if the world around her only begins to pulse when she chooses to chase what she loves. Even Herbie's interior matters. The camera loves being inside the car. Long takes with Lohan behind the wheel, windows down, sunlight streaking through, give us space to breathe with her. Her hands on the wheel. Her eyes shifting. Her reflection caught in the rear-view mirror. These scenes feel meditative, especially compared to the louder action beats. They remind us that the journey isn't just external. It's internal, quietly evolving. Sound, too, plays a critical role in crafting the film's environments. The mechanical whir of Herbie's engine is distinct, lighter, more responsive than other cars. He doesn't growl. He sings. The world around him, traffic, weather, other racers, is shaped sonically to contrast that. When Herbie is joyful, the world seems to harmonize. When he's broken, the world dulls. Lighting design follows emotional arcs. In moments of triumph, the frame is drenched in golds and reds. In moments of loss or uncertainty, the film shifts to cooler tones, sterile whites, melancholy blues. But it never turns gray. Even in sadness, there's light. Always. That's the film's ethos. That the road, no matter how steep, continues. In the final race, everything comes together. Location, color, light, and movement. The crowd is a blur. The track stretches endlessly. Herbie gleams. Maggie breathes deeply. The cinematography becomes symphonic. And when they cross that finish line, the camera doesn't cut to the reaction. It holds on the moment. On her. on him, on that feeling of being exactly where you're supposed to be. So yes, Herbie, Fully Loaded is a racing movie, a comedy, a comeback story. But it's also a journey told through setting and sight. A story where every road leads inward, and every corner turned reveals not just the track ahead, but the driver becoming who she was always meant to be. Sometimes the heart of a film doesn't come from what makes it to the screen. It lives in what happens in the shadows of the camera, in the gaps between takes, in the moments that no one plans but no one forgets. On the set of Herbie, Fully Loaded, a film that feels like it was dipped in sunshine and childhood nostalgia, the story of how it was made might be just as rich and endearing as the one it told. Filming began under the long skies of California, with the sun reflecting off the polished chrome of more Volkswagen Beetles than most people will see in their lifetime. There wasn't just one Herbie, or two, or even 5. There were dozens, each one with its own mechanical quirks, built for specific tricks, stunts, or close-up emoting. One car was designed solely to do wheelies. Another had been hollowed out so a stunt driver could control it invisibly from the back seat. And another, nicknamed Winks, had headlight shutters to simulate blinking, because yes, Herbie needed to express affection and sass without ever saying a word. The crew quickly began treating these cars like cast members. They weren't vehicles. They were characters. Each one had a nickname. Grumpy was known to stall unexpectedly. Speedy was used in wide shots that required velocity. And then there was Bouncer, who once took a ramp too fast and landed in a crew tent, thankfully unoccupied at the time, but completely destroyed. The stunt team took it in stride. The tent was rebuilt. And Bouncer? He got a reputation. Lindsay Lohan, already rising fast in Hollywood at the time, came into the production with a mix of youthful energy and genuine curiosity. She wasn't a trained driver. So to prepare for the role of Maggie Payton, she went through race training and spent hours learning the mechanics of driving, not just with style, but with precision. But what surprised most of the crew was her affection for Herbie. During breaks, she could be found talking to the car, resting her hand on its hood, even occasionally patting it for good luck before intense scenes. She once admitted, off-camera, "It's weird, but I swear he listens." She wasn't the only one who felt it. Justin Long, who played Kevin, shared a particularly funny anecdote in an interview years later. During a long night shoot, he found himself alone on set with one of the animatronic Herbies. The car was supposed to wink at him during a scene. But the animatronic rig malfunctioned and wouldn't stop winking. Every 5 seconds. Blink, blink, blink. It continued for nearly 20 minutes until the effects team fixed it. Long called it the most flirted with I've ever felt by a car. Director Angela Robinson, making one of her first major studio features, was determined to honor the spirit of Herbie's legacy. She fought to shoot as much practically as possible. That meant real stunts, real crashes, and real tension when things didn't go to plan. One of the biggest challenges came during a race scene meant to capture Herbie taking a turn at an impossible angle. The rigged stunt car failed to make the drift and clipped a stack of track tires, sending one bouncing straight into a monitor. No one was hurt, but the take was lost, and the monitor? Shattered. That moment became a kind of folklore on set. Herbie doesn't like being told what to do. And it wasn't always the machines causing trouble. Weather, notoriously absent from most Southern California shoots, made surprise cameos. One scheduled shoot day in Pasadena was soaked by an unseasonal thunderstorm. Rather than cancel the shoot, Robinson had the lighting adjusted, the mood reworked, and rewrote the scene into a dramatic night drive, complete with reflection shots and emotional beats. What was once a cheerful montage turned into one of the film's most atmospheric sequences, all born from a sudden downpour. The crew, many of whom had worked on serious dramas or large action films, initially underestimated the tone of the project. But over time, something shifted. Grip operators brought their kids to set. Prop masters started giving Herbie props to hold between scenes. A running joke developed about Herbie needing his own trailer. Someone even printed a mock call sheet with Herbie listed above the human cast. It was taped to a wall in the makeup trailer, and no one had the heart to take it down. There were also more delicate moments of stress that became turning points. Midway through production, a key scene involving Lindsay and Herbie nearly fell apart. The stunt version of the car stalled repeatedly. Lighting windows were closing. Tension on set was high. Rather than push through, Robinson called a full break. She walked the perimeter of the set in silence, then returned with a decision. They'd reshoot it at sunset the next day. The gamble paid off. That reshoot became one of the most beautiful visuals in the movie. Herbie and Maggie, side by side against a lavender sky. The crew's camaraderie only deepened as the weeks rolled on. Every Friday, Herbie Happy Hour was declared. Crew members would bring Herbie-themed snacks, cupcakes shaped like tires, cookies with red and blue stripes. A prop assistant once crafted a miniature Herbie out of modeling clay. It ended up on set for background decoration and even got a cameo in a garage scene. One particularly endearing detail? Herbie's horn. That iconic meep meep wasn't generated in post. It was triggered live on set by a crew member nicknamed Benny, whose sole job was to listen for audio cues and activate Herbie's voice at the perfect moment. Benny wore headphones and carried a small switchboard. When Herbie was supposed to react, he would press the button, trying to time it just right. The crew dubbed him Herbie's translator. And as for the final race scene, shot across multiple days on a sprawling speedway outside L.A., that was a logistical dance of its own. Hundreds of extras were brought in as spectators. Dozens of cameras were mounted around the track. Helicopter shots were timed with vehicle choreography down to the second. Robinson, ever calm at the center of chaos, directed from a mobile command unit parked near the finish line. The stunt team rehearsed each segment like a stage play. Justin Long, not needed for the driving shots, wandered the set handing out bottled water and cheering like a real fan. When the scene wrapped, the cast and crew didn't erupt in cheers. They just stood in silence, many with hands on hips, watching Herbie glide across the finish line. The camera operator lowered his rig. One of the drivers high-fived a mechanic. And someone whispered, "He made it." Even post-production was filled with surprises. Editor Wendy Green Brickmont later revealed that Herbie's emotional reactions often weren't scripted. The team would scan hours of footage for little moments, headlight flicks, bumper bounces, and build entire emotional arcs around them. Sometimes, the best reactions came from unintended mechanical quirks. What looked like Herbie turning away in shame was actually a hydraulic fault. But it was so expressive, they kept it in. The music team, too, played their part in Herbie's character. Composer Mark Mothersbaugh crafted a score that wove playfulness with adventure, but also gave Herbie a voice, a musical thread that followed him like a whisper of emotion. The cues matched his movements, his moods, and eventually became part of the storytelling. When Herbie was sad, the score dipped to piano. When he raced, the rhythm kicked like a heartbeat. And when filming finally ended, and the cars were prepped for transport back to their storage units, the crew couldn't bear to let go so quickly. So they held a parade. A full procession, complete with streamers and music and a banner reading, "Thanks, Herbie." All the Herbie models rolled through the lot one last time. Lindsay rode in the passenger seat of her favorite version. Crew members clapped. Some cried. One stuntman revved the engine too loud and set off a car alarm. It was beautiful. And chaotic. And exactly the right ending. Because the making of Herbie, Fully Loaded, was never about spectacle. It was about feel. About believing in the unlikely, trusting in the magic, and finding joy in the unexpected. The set wasn't just where a movie happened. It was where people, cast, crew, cars and all, remembered how it feels to make something that makes you smile. Sometimes, the simplest stories carry the most profound messages, tucked beneath laughter, disguised in movement, hidden inside things that gleam and go fast. Herbie, fully loaded may, at first glance, seem like a cheerful racing film, a throwback to an old franchise with a dash of Disney sparkle. But for those who let the engine purr and the story unfold, it becomes clear that beneath its playful surface, this is a film about agency, identity, resilience, and rediscovery. And perhaps more unexpectedly, it's a meditation on connection, between people, between machines, between belief and possibility. At the center of the narrative lies the theme of self-worth, a thread that winds through every frame with quiet insistence. Maggie Peyton doesn't start the film lost. She starts it restricted. Her potential is not something she needs to find, it's something she needs permission to access. The world around her, despite its smiles and affection, places limits on her. She's good, yes. Smart. Talented. But the message is subtle and constant. She belongs on the sidelines. In the support role. In the shadows of male predecessors who are expected to carry the legacy forward. And then there's Herbie. Battered. Dismissed. Parked in a junkyard as though he had no more stories to tell. He is the physical manifestation of Maggie's internal struggle. Together, they form a mirror, a pair of characters that reflect each other's hidden brilliance. In this bond, the film makes its first symbolic statement. Value isn't determined by the world's recognition, but by one's readiness to reclaim it. The junkyard setting, where Herbie and Maggie first connect, is drenched in metaphor. Rusted cars. Forgotten parts. Potential discarded. But here, amid the remnants of abandoned journeys, two beings, one human, one mechanical, form a pact of mutual belief. The junkyard doesn't just serve as a backdrop. It's a crucible. A place of transformation. It symbolizes the raw truth of starting over. Sometimes, greatness begins where you were left behind. From here, another theme roars to life. Rebirth. Herbie isn't fixed in a garage and unveiled like a showpiece. He drives himself. He participates in his resurrection. Just as Maggie doesn't simply fall into racing success, she chooses it. The film never lets its characters be passive. Every growth moment is earned. And every success is built on decisions. Small, brave choices that accumulate into something unstoppable. The symbolism is clear. We are not shaped by others' expectations. We are built, rebuilt, by the choices we dare to make in defiance of them. Herbie's sentience plays into the film's larger symbolic structure. He isn't just alive for laughs or hijinks. His behavior represents something deeper. Intuition. He knows before Maggie does. He reacts before she articulates her fear or her hope. He acts on impulse, on feeling, on trust. And in this, the film introduces its most enduring theme, mutual healing. Maggie and Herbie don't just help each other win. They help each other recover. From doubt. From dismissal. From the pain of being underestimated. Their victories are not solo triumphs. They are shared restorations. It's why, in the final moments, after the crowd cheers, after the flags fall, there's no grand speech. No kiss. No epilogue soaked in glamour. Just Maggie and Herbie, side by side, engine humming, ready for the next ride. The symbolism couldn't be clearer. The journey doesn't end when you win. It continues, endlessly, in the quiet commitment to keep driving forward. Herbie, fully loaded, may come wrapped in jokes and joyrides, but beneath its hood lies a beating heart. A story about being seen. About reclaiming your place. About trusting your instincts even when the world tells you to slow down. And most of all, it's about believing that no matter how long you've been parked, you can always start the engine again. Sometimes, the best filmmaking doesn't scream for attention. It hums gently beneath the surface, carrying the story forward in ways you don't always consciously notice. That's exactly how Herbie, fully loaded, works. What may seem like a breezy, brightly colored family film on the surface is actually the result of meticulously crafted technique. carefully calibrated to create a world where magic and mechanics collide, and a little car with a big heart feels as alive as any actor on the screen. From the opening frame, director Angela Robinson makes it clear, this is not just a revival of a beloved Disney property, it's a celebration. A film that seeks to capture the wonder of childhood wonderment, the rush of speed, and the beauty of rediscovering one's purpose, all without veering too far from the realism that grounds its emotional core. And to achieve that balance, the team leaned heavily on a hybrid approach to filmmaking, mixing old-school, practical effects with just the right amount of modern polish. Let's begin with the most prominent technical choice, the use of practical stunts. Herbie isn't animated. He isn't digitally manipulated in post-production to perform his antics. Almost everything the car does, every drift, every wheelie, every tilt of its head, was achieved in camera. This decision was crucial in preserving the tactile charm of the original Herbie films. The audience needed to believe that this little car could do extraordinary things because it was built to do them. To make this possible, the production used a fleet of specially rigged Volkswagen Beetles, each one built for a specific purpose. Some were ultralight stunt cars, others were heavily rigged with hydraulics to lift and tilt the car's body. One car even had a rear seat steering system so that a hidden driver could control Herbie while allowing Lindsay Lohan to appear as though she was driving solo. The result? Seamless scenes that grounded fantasy in reality, allowing the audience to suspend disbelief without ever feeling like they were watching something fabricated. This tactile approach extended into the cinematography as well. Greg Gardner, the film's director of photography, opted for a palette that felt sunny, saturated, and optimistic. It's a visual language that speaks to possibility. Golden hues during race sequences, soft blues and warm lights during moments of reflection, and saturated reds and yellows when emotions run high. Every frame is designed to evoke emotion, not through heavy-handed symbolism, but through subtle emotional association. Gardner's camera work also reflects the film's dual purpose, to be kinetic without being chaotic. During races, the camera moves like it's part of the action. Mounted on cars, swinging from cranes, swooping overhead to keep pace with Herbie as he maneuvers through the track. But in quieter scenes, when Maggie is struggling or bonding with Herbie, the movement slows. The camera holds still, grounding us, reminding us that even in a film about speed, stillness has weight. Editing played a key role in making those shifts feel natural. Wendy Green Brickmont's editing style is precise, but never mechanical. She knows when to let a moment breathe, and when to hit the gas. The final race sequence, for example, isn't just cut for speed. It's cut for emotion. Reaction shots, close-ups, slow-motion inserts of Herbie's tires gripping the track or his headlights blinking in excitement. Every beat is timed not just to match the rhythm of the race, but to the rhythm of Maggie's journey. Then there's the sound design. Herbie doesn't talk, but he communicates. His engine growls when he's annoyed. He squeals when he's excited. His horn is almost a character in itself, playful, stubborn, proud. All of that was created through a carefully layered sound mix. Real car noises were blended with synthesized tones to give Herbie a unique, expressive voice. Sound editors treated him like a vocal performer. Different tones were assigned to different moods, low rumbles for frustration, high-pitched revs for joy, midtones for curiosity. This was no easy task. Each stunt car had a slightly different engine sound in real life, depending on how it was rigged. So the sound team had to standardize Herbie's voice, choosing one signature engine tone and applying it across all sequences so the character remained consistent, even when the vehicle playing him changed from shot to shot. The rest of the soundscape supported this fantasy. During race scenes, ambient noise is stripped back to emphasize Herbie's movements and Maggie's focus. Tires screech with exaggerated clarity. Engines roar like beasts. But outside of the track, the sound design softens. When Maggie first finds Herbie in the junkyard, there's a hush to the world, rustling leaves, distant traffic, wind through metal. That contrast creates an almost spiritual tone to their meeting. It's a brilliant sound choice that mirrors the film's emotional rise on the music front. Composer Mark Mothersbaugh delivered a score that fuses energy with heart. The music never overshadows the scene, it amplifies it. During Herbie's antics, the score turns whimsical, with plucky strings and upbeat tempos. During races, it shifts into propulsive rhythms. But the emotional crux of the score comes in its quieter tracks, those melodic, almost lullaby-like themes that play when Herbie and Maggie connect. These moments, often underscored with gentle piano or acoustic guitar, remind the audience that this isn't just about winning. It's about belonging. But perhaps the most underestimated filmmaking choice was the restraint shown in digital effects. In an era where CGI was booming, Herbie, Fully Loaded made a deliberate choice to use visual effects only where absolutely necessary. Most of Herbie's movements were real. Most of the crashes were practical. When digital effects were used, they were used subtly, to clean up stunts, to enhance a background, to erase safety harnesses. This restraint helped preserve the physicality of the film. And that physicality was crucial for audience connection. In terms of production logistics, the film was an elaborate dance of coordination. Race scenes were filmed on real tracks with actual drivers. Extras had to be choreographed like pit crews. Weather sometimes threw off entire days of filming, leading to creative red-blocking and location shifts. But Robinson and her crew leaned into those challenges. When one track shoot was rained out, they rewrote the scene into a night sequence, bringing with it a whole new emotional layer and a moody visual tone that contrasted beautifully with the rest of the film. The film's pacing is another triumph of its craft. At 101 minutes, it never drags. It flows with the efficiency of a well-tuned engine. The first act introduces Maggie, her family, and Herbie without exposition dumps. The second act builds stakes and relationships. The third act delivers catharsis, not just in spectacle, but in emotional payoff. That structure may sound conventional, but the way it's executed, through tone, timing, and texture, is anything but formulaic. And while all of these technical choices built the world of the film, it was the film's box office strategy that brought it to audiences. Disney marketed the film heavily toward families and fans of the original Herbie series. Trailers leaned into nostalgia while showcasing Lindsay Lohan's rising star power. Merchandise ranged from toys to backpacks, with Herbie's distinctive stripes and number 53 adorning everything from lunchboxes to pajamas. The studio knew they weren't just selling a film, they were reviving a legacy. And in the summer of 2005, Herbie, Fully Loaded held its own. While it didn't break records, it performed respectably at the box office, grossing over $144 million worldwide. But its impact wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in smiles. In the joy of new fans discovering Herbie for the first time. In older fans watching their childhood hero come to life again, not as a relic, but as a champion. In the end, that's what the filmmaking techniques of Herbie, Fully Loaded accomplish. They don't dazzle for the sake of it. They don't rely on spectacle to carry emotion. Instead, they build a world that feels real, even when the car is driving on two wheels, blinking its headlights like eyes, or leaping across a finish line in a gravity-defying stunt. Because the best technique is invisible. It's not about what the audience notices. It's about what they feel. And in that sense, every camera move, every sound cue, every edit and engine rev in this film points to one thing. The belief that if you build a story with love and tell it with care, even the most unlikely hero can drive straight into the heart. There are stories that exist solely on the screen, captured in frames and sealed in time. And then there are those that extend beyond the frame, into the hearts of the people who brought them to life and the eyes of those who watched them unfold. Herbie, Fully Loaded may have roared into theaters with the shine of a summer blockbuster, but its real story was told in the quiet moments between scenes, in the reflections of those who made it, and in the laughter of the audiences who took the ride. At the heart of the film stood Lindsay Lohan, then 20 years old, navigating the delicate space between childhood stardom and grown-up cinema. She was coming off the acclaim of Mean Girls, but Herbie, fully loaded, asked her to tap into something else, something more earnest. In interviews at the time, she reflected on what drew her to the role. "Maggie reminded me of myself," she said. "She's got something to prove, not just to the world, but to herself. And I knew what that felt like." On set, she was reportedly as spirited as the car itself, quick to laugh, always full of energy. Cast and crew alike spoke of her surprising physicality in the role. She threw herself into the driving scenes with full commitment, learning how to handle a stick shift, practicing with stunt coordinators, and even racing a bit off-camera to prepare. But it was her relationship with Herbie, the car, that truly stood out. Lohan admitted more than once that she talked to Herbie when no one else was around. "You had to," she said. "He gave so much. You had to give something back." Opposite her was Justin Long, playing Kevin, a mechanic with a heart of gold and a quiet belief in Maggie's potential. Long brought a grounded charm to the film, offering humor and sincerity in equal measure. In interviews, he described the experience as joyfully weird. "You're acting opposite a car that reacts like a puppy. It shouldn't work, but it does. There were times when I forgot there wasn't someone inside it controlling the face. It felt alive." The chemistry between Lohan and Long wasn't explosive, but that was part of the charm. Their characters didn't need a dramatic romance. What they shared was trust, an easy rapport that felt like an old friendship blooming into something deeper. That nuance, rare in a family film, was one of the quiet successes of the cast's performance. Then there was Matt Dillon, stepping into the role of Trip Murphy, the arrogant, calculating racer and Herbie's primary antagonist. Dillon leaned into the role with delightful menace, all slick hair and smug confidence. He brought a layer of smarmy charisma that elevated Trip from cartoonish villain to believable foil. Off-screen, however, Dillon was all professionalism and mischief. He often stayed in character during race rehearsals, barking mock orders at the crew or making champion declarations to extras. But it was all in good fun. One crew member said he knew exactly how far to push it. He never took himself too seriously, and that made the rest of us feel free to play. Michael Keaton, cast as Ray Peyton Sr., offered the film its gravitas. As Maggie's father, he brought a blend of stern tradition and buried warmth. In interviews, Keaton praised the film's message. "There's something classic about this story. It's not about blowing things up. It's about showing up, for yourself and for the people who believe in you." Keaton, known for his versatility, brought quiet power to the screen, grounding the more whimsical moments in genuine, and of course, there was Breckin Meyer as Ray Peyton Jr., Maggie's brother, who played his role with a light touch of insecurity and sibling rivalry. Meyer said, "It's funny, I thought I'd just be the comic relief. But the more we filmed, the more I realized, Ray's story is Maggie's in reverse. He's losing faith in himself while she's gaining hers." Behind the camera, Angela Robinson helmed the cast with clarity and compassion. Known for her collaborative style, Robinson fostered a set where play was encouraged but precision was honored. The actors, particularly Lohan, praised her for creating a space where you could try things and fail, and no one would judge you. In press junkets, Robinson spoke of her vision for the film. "I wanted to tell a story about hope, about coming back, about how, sometimes, the things we think are broken just need someone to believe in them again." That belief echoed into the audience. When the film hit theaters in June 2005, it was met with a wave of anticipation and nostalgia. Families flocked to see it, hoping to recapture the magic of the original Love Bug films, while younger viewers found in Herbie a brand new kind of hero. Reviews from critics were mixed. Some called it too safe, too saccharine. But audiences felt differently. Online forums lit up with stories of kids who came home begging their parents for toy Beetles, of adults who smiled through the credits remembering the original Herbie from their childhoods, of teenage girls who saw in Maggie not just a driver, but a trailblazer. "She's not trying to be someone's dream girl," one viewer wrote. "She's trying to be herself. And that makes her kind of a superhero,"